What is principled entrepreneurship? Do you want to be a principled entrepreneur? Do you have no idea what the difference is between regular entrepreneurship and what makes a principled entrepreneur? That is what we are tackling today on the Possibility Mom Live. Today, we are tackling what is principled entrepreneurship. If you've been following me for a while, you know that I have been in business for myself for 15 years. I started my career as an interior designer and then more recently became a life coach and a business coach. And then, very, very, very much more recently, leaned into my Catholic identity when I understood that there was a really big difference in the understanding of the human person when you are a Catholic. And so that was my evolution. I find this concept very intriguing. And so when I picked up this book at my local schools, my school's book fair, the school my kids go to, that was a very not articulate way of saying my local school's book fair, we create an intro to the principled entrepreneur. I just knew I had to have the author of this book on my podcast. But before we welcome the host or the author of this podcast, I want to share with you something kind of fun. We are approaching the holiday season, of course, at time of recording. And so you might be shopping for some gifts for your husband. So I have created a YouTube video for you that I think you are going to love. And I want to share with you just a teeny tiny clip of this video just because having fun is, you might be able to tell I love having some fun. So let me show you a little clip from unique gift ideas for your husband that he'll love.
This is cool. They're mouthwash tablets. What's a mouthwash tablet? Is it like a mint or you're supposed to spit it out? Okay, let's so it's like it comes in this little tub. Oh, I don't think you're supposed to use it that way. Wait. Or you're supposed to dissolve it in water. You're not supposed to do it the way that I just did it. It says right on the thing, do not swallow. Note to self. We have, this is interesting.
That's just one fun thing you can learn in my newest upload to YouTube. Note to self, read the instructions when you purchase something called a mouthwash tab. So you can check that out on my YouTube channel. My very latest upload, gift ideas for your husband. There's some fun spiritual gift ideas, sentimental gift ideas, just straight up fun gift ideas. I think you're really going to enjoy that video. All right, back to Principled Entrepreneurship. Speaking of gifts, I have picked up 5 copies of this book because I have the great pleasure of living in a town. I live in Ave Maria, Florida, that attracts a lot of entrepreneurs, but not just entrepreneurs, what I would call and what the author of this book, Grady Connolly, would call principled entrepreneurs. And so I just think this is a very interesting topic. I think you're going to love the conversation we're going to have. When I saw this book, I knew that this would make an amazing gift for a lot of people in my life. And so welcome to the Possibility Mom Live, Grady Connolly. Grady, how you doing?
How you doing, Lisa? Thanks for having me on. It's good to meet you in person, or I guess virtually, which is just fantastic.
This is so much fun. So before I share a little bit of the book with everybody watching and listening, start off by telling us, for anyone who might not know who you are and your work, introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, of course. So my name is Grady Connolly. I live here in Washington, D.C. I graduated from Catholic University of America here in D.C. D.C. has really become home for me. I grew up in a really small town in southern Maine. So kind of started out in the middle of nowhere and now here in the city. So it's a real blessing and a real joy. But really fell in love with startup culture and entrepreneurship really my freshman year of college. Andreas Widmer, who's a professor here at Catholic U, wrote a book called The Pope and the CEO. And it's about him serving as a Swiss guard for John Paul II, and then leading into being an entrepreneur and a business person, and kind of the synergy between the two vocations. So really fell in love with his story and just these ideas of what business can do for a culture, for your family, and for the world, and for your faith, really, which I'm sure we'll get into here shortly. But it was a real joy learning from them. And then when I graduated, really wanted to do something in relation to principled entrepreneurship, but teaching the next generation. And I had always wanted to write a children's book, always wanted to write, and figured what better way to teach young people in a time like this where business is really misunderstood, and really wanted to put together a piece of work with my illustrator, Joni McMahon, who also graduated from Catholic. And she's unbelievably talented. And we put this together, and it's been really amazing just to see the amount of people that have read it, that have enjoyed it. I'm thrilled you picked it up at your book fair. Was that so? The people who did that, quick side note, Good News Book Fair, amazing company. Check them out. They do all ethical books that are not going to contaminate young people's minds. But started working with them a little bit and getting this book into the hands of people. So it's great to know that people like you picked up a copy. So that's just a little bit about kind of where I'm from, why I got into this. And so far, it's just been a really beautiful and fun journey so far.
Yeah. Okay. Not just one copy, 5 copies. I literally,
Thank you.
I picked up the copy. I just really want people to understand. Like, I really appreciate this book because I picked up the copy. I read it really quickly, but I had all these kids around me as I was shopping. So I just read like 1 or 2 pages, but I was very intrigued. And then I went home and I read the whole thing. And I immediately texted the woman who organizes the book fair and was like, hey, I know that I came in at the last, literally, I was shopping at the last 5 minutes. Very Lisa Canning of me. But I was like, is there any way I could just buy 5 copies? Like, can you sneak the orders in? And she was like, yeah, they're actually bringing the truck like this afternoon. So we could probably just like literally take them off the truck. Because I think this book is a beautiful children's book. And a beautiful gift for the children of entrepreneurs, a beautiful gift for a budding entrepreneur. It reminds me of Dr. Seuss's Oh, the Places You'll Go. That was like a gift that I got at my graduation. That was from college. That was a gift that I remember one of my college profs like read to all of us on the last day of school. Like, that was sort of, I just remember that book made the rounds very much at that milestone. I think this book is the same kind of thing for an entrepreneur. Like, this is the kind of book that I would encourage an entrepreneur to pick up for their children, absolutely, but truly to pick up for themselves. So I'm going to actually minimize you for just a second because I want people to see the pages of this book. I'm just going to read a few of the pages. So basically it's a mom and her child is coming up and saying to her, Mom, can you tell me about your work? Okay. And then she says, I work as a principled entrepreneur. And of course, there's conversation around what does a principled entrepreneur do? We create jobs, we solve problems. But my favorite one, my favorite page in this entire book. And if you are listening to this on podcast, I want to encourage you to just pop on over to to YouTube and look at the images if you're curious. Because this page is my absolute favorite. We take risks because bravery makes us stronger. And I'm just going to be super honest. I'm going to bring you back, Grady. I think that page was the page that, like, I think I stopped on that page and then texted my friend, hey, can you grab 5 more copies for me?
Oh, I appreciate that. I love that.
Because here's the thing that I want to hear your definition of a principled entrepreneur. But what I think people don't understand, and the misconception, you said it a couple of minutes ago, that there's misunderstanding in business. And I coach a lot of women who come to me and say, somehow it's not going to make me holy. It's greedy. It's going to distract me from my primary vocation. All these things are important considerations. But what I want to scream from the rooftops that I know you care about a lot too, is what if business can be your most sanctifying activity in your life? What business is going to build you so much virtue that is going to overflow into your marriage, into your motherhood, into all the things. And then Father Nathan from the St. John Institute, he said this on my recent business summit. He said, real success in business is holiness. So this is just something that I am so fired up about, and I know you are too. So tell us, Grady, define for us, what is a principled entrepreneur?
Yeah, so it's one of those things when I first started writing the book, I got a lot of kind of mixed reviews on, is principled entrepreneurship too big of a word to even put on a children's book? And short answer is kind of is, right? That's the whole point, is that no one is really talking about the difference between principled entrepreneurship and just being an entrepreneur. And I think that core difference, and you mentioned it briefly there, is virtue. And I think right now, when we talk about business, when we talk about entrepreneurship, every young person knows what entrepreneurship is. We live in a Shark Tank world. People have the lemonade stands, and it's just like we all know what that is. But what we've lost is understanding how virtue plays such a critical role in building something. And this is something that Andreas Widmer said during my freshman year class at the Catholic University, is that we are co-creating with God when we conduct business. And that is one of the most empowering sentences, that when we are building a business, when we're creating a product, a service, whatever it is, it doesn't matter what it is, we are doing something that is, number one, building a better world. You're co-creating with the ultimate creator, the one who created you and me in this entire world. And you're also leading people closer to the divine if you are doing it correctly. So if you are creating a business that is, it doesn't even need to be inherently religious. And I think that's a lot of times people misunderstand that, to be a principled entrepreneur, to be a Catholic entrepreneur, to be whatever it is, you don't need to be selling something directly religious or directly Catholic. If you're doing something that is helping people to flourish, whether that be financially, whether it be morally, spiritually, whatever it is, you are doing something beautiful. And that's really what we're called to do when we're building businesses. And I think right now, what a lot of people misunderstand, we live in this culture where the only time we really hear about business is Elon Musk, Kanye West, Balenciaga. We hear about all the scandals and just people conducting business in a horrible way. Right. And it's a failure of, I think, the human moral compass. It's not a failure of the free market system. It's not a failure of what business is. It's a failure of the culture and a failure of something deeper within the human person.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes business, unfortunately, has gotten this bad rap. We see movies like Wolf of Wall Street, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or it's the capitalistic person who is in the total pursuit of money and will kick anyone out of the way that is going to get in the way of that pursuit of the wealth.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's what we see, and that's what people understand business to be. But if we think about every vocation, whether it's being a politician, a business person, even clergy, being a priest, right? You can falter and you can be a negative person in that vocation. So to me, it's not about business, right? You can make money in business. That, like, money is not the problem. It's a
Mm-hmm.
morality problem. So it's, how do we teach people to be better business people? It's not replace business with some alternate system or alternate idea. Because ultimately, business is the cure of poverty, right? Business is the cure of so many problems. And we don't talk about that. We only see the cronyism that is in our culture today.
Okay. Oh my gosh. Okay. Business is the cure for poverty. Just everybody listen. Business is the cure for poverty. Tell us more about that.
Yeah. So this is something that a lot of people don't talk about. One of my favorite people, and if you love to read, Arthur Brooks is an incredible author. Obviously not for children, but for adults, just incredible. And he gave a talk. He used to be the president of the American Enterprise Institute. And he has a whole series on this on YouTube. I think it's like a 1 hour special. And then he has a bunch of other videos. But he talks about this, how business in free markets is the only system that allows a person to come from nothing and to have the freedom to be creatively free, but also have a system in which they can build something and find a customer and let supply and demand take control. And
Mm.
there's no person or idea or anything that can stand in the way. It's you and a consumer. And if a consumer has a need, they can make a purchase freely and support your mission and support what you're doing. Entrepreneurship and free markets is the solution to poverty, one for private property, for the freedom to create, right? The rule of law. We have law that protects entrepreneurs and protects their intellectual property, and all these ideas. It's a whole life cycle, right? It's a whole puzzle, and I think this is why so many people come to, for example, the United States. And I think, again, in the United States right now, there's a lot of confusion and a lot of times negativity around business. But there's a reason why our culture is inherently very attractive to people, because our system allows people from immigrant backgrounds, from people from homelessness and from being hungry as children, to have the opportunity to build something. I mean, I like to tell people, by no means that I grew up in poverty, but I grew up in a very small town in southern Maine, right? Middle of nowhere. My dad cleans houses for a living. My mom worked at customer service. I mean, we were not rich, okay?
Mhm.
And from a young age, my parents always taught us, if you work really hard, this is the cornball line. If you work really hard, you can build a future for yourself. And I mean, I tried to push that as hard as I could. And I think that message, if we teach our children that, right, and really live up to that, like, don't let go of that. Let them work hard and let them build a life. I got, by the grace of God, a full scholarship to Catholic University. That was my ticket out of Maine. Went to Catholic U, worked with, probably 6 or 7 startups throughout college, learned a ton, right? I wanted to make money while I was in college. So I started investing. My dad taught me how to invest in college, right? Graduated with no debt. Then wanted to write a children's book, wanted to start my own company. I now have my own company doing social media for Catholic brands and things like that. So it's like, to me, I have a joy in my life because I know I've made a life for myself. I haven't taken anything from anyone. I haven't, relied on anyone else. It's me, it's my relationship with God, and it's my ability in this market to find a customer and to find a product. So that's kind of how I see this, that if we teach people to be good business people, you will lift up more people than you push down. And I think that's what's really important when we're talking about business with young people, is you have the opportunity to change culture. Like, that is a powerful message, that you have the opportunity to completely alter the way society works, for the better, for the worse. That's a lot of responsibility. So if you put God at the center of that, and you put the person at the center of that, you put, your customer at the focal point, you will really change the way the world works, and you will lift people to their ergon, their ultimate flourishing. And I think that's what we don't talk about enough, unfortunately.
I love it so much. I have so many places I could go right now, but I'm going to force myself to stick to a pathway. So one, I could literally go 10 different pathways, but I'm going to pick 2. First pathway I want to go here is, when I coach my clients, so I coach a lot of moms. Some of the moms that I coach are stay-at-home moms who homeschool their children, and they really want to create income from home so they can potentially replace their husband's salary, or perhaps allow their salary to be the primary one so that the husband can either come home or do something different, be in a more fulfilling job. And so I encourage my people. That's just like one kind of the people that I serve. I serve a lot of other people too, primarily Catholic moms. But a thing that I encourage them to paint is a very colorful vision of the impact they want their business to have on the world. So sometimes I think, myself included, you get into entrepreneurship and you're kind of like, I just want my husband home, like, or I just want to be able to pay for Catholic school, or like, wouldn't it be great if this, that. And don't get me wrong, it's very important to think about the vivid vision for your family, absolutely. But I think sometimes we forget about then that very colorful vision where you can touch it, where you can feel it, where you can taste it, where you like just want it so badly for your people. I think we can sometimes forget. Let's paint that vision for your customer, because again, it's important to paint that vision for yourself. And like, yeah, sure, you want the freedom to go on vacation, or you want the freedom. These are not unimportant things to imagine. These are actually very motivating things to imagine.
Hmm.
I think sometimes people don't think about, okay, use that same imagination, use that same color and make it vivid for the impact on your people. So for example, I have a dream of I want stay-at-home moms to be making multi six figures, but I also have a dream of like mom millionaires, Catholic mom millionaires. And I can picture it, Grady. It's like I live in Ave Maria, Florida. So for me, I'm taking this whole group of women to like Fort Myers or Naples, or maybe we go to the other coast, Miami, right? And it's a luxury retreat where we are like, yes, by the beach, and yes, enjoying beautiful meals and like fellowship together in some beautiful setting. But then this group of millionaire moms, like millionaire moms on our knees in front of a monstrous, praising the Lord. Like, and that it causes me tears because
It's
I can
beautiful.
picture the impact of that. I can picture the impact. If I can help moms make millions of dollars to impact the world through their platforms, I can picture what that looks like. So, if you're listening to this, I want to encourage you, if you are an entrepreneur yourself, what does that look like for you? The customer that you're serving, the mom whose meals you're trying to make easier, the mom whose closet you're trying to have more organized, the mom whose marriage you want to, help, the homeschooling curriculum you want to help make easier, all the things. Like, what is the impact on their life that brings you to the point of tears? So, Grady, I want to ask this question to you. What's the impact you want your business to make on the world?
It's a fantastic question. And I'll start by something you said a moment ago. And I think it's very easy because I felt this way. During college, I always said I wanted to have a company before I graduated so that I would graduate with my own thing. I wouldn't have to go get a job. And I
Mm.
was so focused on that goal. And what's interesting is it didn't happen. And I was so frustrated because I was like, I need to come up with something quick because I need to have that freedom. And I found myself getting very creatively frustrated because I was so focused on trying to build something and then find a customer to give it to. Right. And that's kind of backwards when you need to be looking at what's a problem and then finding, okay, or finding, what do the customers need and then delivering that solution to them. So I think the first thing I would say is it's really important not to get so focused on, I need to be an entrepreneur right now and trying to force creativity that's not there because it's going to result in creative frustration, but also a business that's ultimately not really going to fulfill a need. And ultimately, it's not focused on the customer. Because if you're just building something because you want to be an entrepreneur, you're not actually solving a problem for the customer. So it needs to be the other way around. So that's the first thing I'll say. The other thing I'll say is, so for my personal company, I started doing social media for music artists because I love the music industry. And I thought that's what I want to do. That's it, right? There's a lot of money in it. It's super high paced and all these different things. After about 3 months of doing that, I realized I really feel that my skill sets can be better utilized for the church and for leading people towards God. And I still work with music artists and I love it on the side. But my real core has become working with clergy, with priests, with Catholic nonprofits, with different organizations that are trying to use social media to spread the gospel in some way. And I think what I found for me is that as of this point in my life, that's my mission. And I feel that that's what God wants me to do. But I think overall, it's also important that I don't get so tied into this momentary mission that I'm not open to where God might want to take this. And I think that's the key, is having a mission, but also knowing that God might take this in a completely different direction. And having the willingness to go that direction, I think takes a lot of humility, a lot of peace and prayer. And sometimes it's like you don't really know where it's going, but you kind of feel that the Holy Spirit is guiding it. And I kind of felt that way with what I was doing with the music artists, and then kind of somehow ended up with Catholic priests. It's like the way that that went from one thing to another. It's like it's so random, right?
Mhm.
But I just felt that that's where the Holy Spirit was guiding things.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
again, some people might, it might be the other way around. Maybe some people start with Catholic and then end up, you want to work in the music space. Like everyone kind of has, their mission and their vocation. But I think it's just really important. And I think the core of finding your mission is prayer. And I think that's something in college when I was having that kind of restlessness, that creative restlessness, that I wasn't starting with prayer. I wasn't starting with what is my purpose here? And what am I actually building this for?
Mhm.
And if you start with just trying to build something for the sake of building something, it's not going to really fulfill you. And ultimately, I don't really see it making you a millionaire. But I think a lot of times the millionaires in our society stumble upon it because they just feel the need. And I think that's really the secret to what a lot of these successful entrepreneurs and Catholic entrepreneurs are doing.
Right. Oh, I love it so much. Faith, Hope, and Love here on YouTube is saying, I'm loving this whole thing. I'm glad you're loving it.
Thanks,
So,
Faith, Hope, and Love.
um, I want to ask you another question about when it's not working. So I started my career on HGTV, and then that morphed into an interior design career. And then that morphed into, as I had so many children and I was talking to moms in their kitchens, these moms with like one or two with high level careers, like lawyers and doctors, because that was sort of who I attracted, high end interior design. Um, them asking me, how on earth are you running your life? So then it morphed into very kind of more secular, like accessible life coaching, but then morphed into Catholic. So it's kind of similar in that way. But a question I get asked a lot, and I'll be very frank with you, I ask this myself, and I don't know if I have a clear answer, which is why I'm really curious about yours. When something isn't working, so you wanted to build a business right out of school, and you kind of like perhaps had that like very firmly, right? So an observation I observe in myself as well as in people I coach is this concept of self-reliance, right? If I just like, and if you're listening to this on podcast app, like I'm clenching my fists. Like if I just tweak the funnel, oh no, I just need to, spend a little bit more on Facebook ads, or it's just like, one more whatever. Like, and it's this very kind of graspy, and the word is self-reliance, right? That was a theme throughout all of my entrepreneurship. Like, just it took me until very recently when I started to really understand the human person and how a Catholic views the human person differently. There's this concept in or sorry, not entrepreneurship. Are you familiar with what human design is?
A
This
little bit,
concept.
but I'm curious your take on it from this
Well,
perspective.
yeah, it's a to be honest, I'm not an expert in this, but I think a secular person would say there are secular entrepreneurs, so non-faith based entrepreneurs who will often, when they're hiring, ask for maybe what is your human design. Like maybe it's like a category. Like, are you what, like your temperament? Are you a sanguine? Are you choleric? It's like, what is your human design? Again, forgive me, I don't really know too much about it, but a Catholic is going to answer that question very differently and specifically and universally, like meaning I am a child of God. You might not answer that on a job interview, but what I mean is when we know that our inherent worth has nothing to do with our performance, that impacts a lot of things. Like that impacts the way that we view achievement. That impacts the way we view our relationships. We are not if we believe that, if we hold that premise true that my worth is in that I'm a child of God, that means that my worth is not in how much money I have or the kind of house I live in or the kind of spouse I marry or my status in my like social circles. That is not where you're measuring your worth. Why am I bringing this all up? Because I think it's very important when entrepreneurs fail, because guess what? Like it just it's just, one of my mentors says this expression often. You either win or you learn, right? But I think this can be a very difficult thing for entrepreneurs to accept. So, Grady, when something doesn't work, what do you do personally? And what do you think the principled entrepreneur could do?
Yeah. So it goes back to the word we said earlier, which is virtue. And, one of the virtues is humility. And I think sometimes failure, when failure becomes a problem, is when pride starts to drive you in fixing the failure. And I think that's kind of where people go wrong. So, for example, if you've been following the FTX scandal, the crypto scandal, I think this is a very good example of pretty much like the exact opposite of principled entrepreneurship, quite frankly, which is, the pursuit of wealth, the fraudulent activity. But then when there's failure, you're seeing it being dealt with in a horrific way. And I think the pride is what drives it. And we live in a hustle culture environment. And I think we have to be careful that we don't fall into that. And I think, for Catholics, we don't fall into that. And when I say hustle culture, I mean this culture of, rise and grind and I don't sleep at night. I just work like crazy. And, it's just like this hamster wheel business. And I think it's so toxic. So I think as Catholics, when we see failure, we need to see it as the Holy Spirit maybe pointing us in a different direction.
Mhm.
And I think also it's the humility and understanding I am wrong. Like, I totally messed this up. How can I find the solution by talking to the customer and figuring out what they actually want? Because I think brands that talk to the customer about what they want, to me, I view that brand as very humble, because the brand isn't saying, well, we know what you want, so we're just going to deliver you what we think you need.
Mhm.
And I think that's where it can get a little sticky. So I think brands that really focus on the consumer is what ultimately is going to solve problems quicker. We're all going to have errors, right? We're all going to have problems when running a company. But I think it's having the grace of knowing where to take it and what to do with it, and the humility to understand that you are not always going to hit a home run, and that's okay, and that's a beautiful thing. I always like to tell people that the apostles always messed up. If you've watched the series The Chosen, you'll see that the disciples constantly are saying things and doing things that Jesus is just like, what are you doing? So it's like God expects us to mess up, and that's okay. I mean, the literal right-hand people of Christ messed up all day long. But it's, again, being a listener is really the key of this. And again, this all comes back to virtue. Virtue at the core of a business is what's going to drive the millions. And I think we think that it's the other way around, that it's the cutthroat, nitty-gritty, harsh people that are going to make the millions, when there are a lot of Catholics that have made a lot of money in, quite frankly, beautiful ways.
Mm.
And I think that, we also acknowledge that money is not bad. And I want to make sure I say that too. Money is not a bad thing. Money is a beautiful thing. Money means, if acquired principally, money is a sign that you're doing something of value. So,
Mhm.
you talking too about this vision of all these Catholic moms that have a really hefty amount in their bank account, but are in front of the Blessed Sacrament. I think that's a beautiful thing, because if you're in front of the Blessed Sacrament and you have all this money, one, chances are you're probably making the money in a good way and you're providing value to people. And two, you're going to use that money for good. And I think, I talk about it a little bit in the back of my book, actually, that the sponsor of this book is a man named Tim Bush. And Tim Bush is the owner of Pacific Hospitality. He's the founder of the Napa Institute, which is a Catholic nonprofit, and lay apostolate, which, if there's anyone who loves conferences and things like that, Napa Institute, amazing content and events. And he's a prime example of this. He loves the Lord more than anything. And but he's made a lot of money conducting business, but his whole thing is people, right? So him having money has enabled this book to happen, right? So
Mhm.
it's this life cycle of when you do business well,
Mhm.
you fuel other people's journeys. And I mean, he has sponsored this piece of my vocation. So it just goes to show the beauty of all of this. But ultimately, to answer your question, I get off on tangents because I get so excited about this. But failure, just let virtue guide the solution, and I think that's when you'll really find that what that solution is.
Humility, longtime listeners of my podcast will know that I've talked quite a bit. I've talked about the virtues of Mary and how those translate for entrepreneurs.
Yes.
I've done many, many different podcast episodes. I've done many podcasts on money is neutral and that it's evidence of the value. So exactly what you're saying. But humility is an interesting virtue because it is, or it can appear, I think, in contrast. Like people will sometimes come to me and say, isn't it prideful if I show up on camera and I tell people you should buy my program or you should, invest in my course or whatever?
Not at all.
And this is the thing. It's like if you are having thoughts that are leading you to that, well, let's examine that, obviously, and let's bring that to prayer, bring that always to examination. But what if your thoughts can be almost obsessive, but in a positive way, of how your product is going to help people? I want to
Mhm.
encourage you, in our time remaining, if you have got questions on this topic for Grady, please put them in live. Grady, what is something you wish every Catholic knew? Let's make it a bit specific. What do you wish every Catholic knew about entrepreneurship?
Hmm. Well, one thing I've been thinking a lot about is the intrinsic entrepreneurialism of Catholicism. And that's a lot in a sentence. But what I mean by that is Catholicism, the way that it shaped the Western world, is quite frankly one of the most incredible examples of entrepreneurship in history. And I think that's something that is worth talking about. I also think when we look at the saints are a lot of times the best examples of entrepreneurship, right? They are Sister Frances Cabrini, the saint. I think we just celebrated her feast day a few weeks ago. And she's a great example of this. She started, by the time she died, like 60 institutions, like hospitals, schools, orphanages. Like that is such a case study of principled entrepreneurship. So I
Mm.
think when we're thinking about Catholic entrepreneurs and Catholic entrepreneurship, like let's look to the saints, let's look to the church and how the church has shaped really the cores of our culture, whether it be helping the poor, the hungry, but also in a modern sense, we look to organizations like Ascension Press and the Napa Institute
Mhm.
and Sophia Institute Press and all these organizations that allow Catholic entrepreneurs to get their ideas out into the public square. Father Mike Schmidt, if you have listened to his Bible in a Year podcast, this is a great example, right, of utilizing the tools of our age to be entrepreneurial for the church. So I think as Catholics, if I would say one thing to really dig deep in and to fall in love with the idea of entrepreneurialism is to look at our saints and look at the church as a success story of innovation and using a combination of the tools of the age and divine providence to shape the way that we live our lives.
I love it. I could talk to you all day. Clearly, we're going to have another podcast just to talk about so many
That'd
others.
be great.
Where can people go to learn more about you and about the book, Grady Connolly?
Yeah, so you can find it on Amazon. It's on Barnes and Noble as well. I am building a website for my company, Social Thomist, which is our organization working with different Catholic groups and social media. You can check us out there very, very soon. But follow me on socials. I'm always up to something, a new project or a new venture. Or I travel a lot for some of my clients. So just try to share little pieces of wisdom and beauty that I find along the way. So Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, all those different platforms. Definitely send me a note. If you read the book and you loved it, let me know. If you didn't love it, also let me know. Let me know why you didn't love it. I'd love to chat about it. Yeah, I appreciate anyone who can, support the mission. Obviously, you don't write books to make money, right? Like I'm not making millions off of these books. I just want people to teach their children about the beauty of business and that they can have a real impact. So, check it out, grab a copy, this Christmas season. And, thanks for the support of the project.
Find Grady on Instagram at the Grady Connolly. And I just want to do a personal plug. How fun would it be if this book and my book, The Possibility Mom, How to Be a Great Mom and Pursue Your Dreams at the Same Time, was given as a bundle for some entrepreneur at Christmas? So, plug for a nice little 1-2 punch. Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in to the Possibility Mom Live. So happy to spend some time with you. And thanks, Grady.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Merry Christmas.